We're just okay and we play some
Movies.
games. We're just okay.
Movie watchers.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Just Okay Movies. I'm your host, Fart Propulsion Professor Engineer BIGGIESIZE, and I'm here with...
Oh, boy. Hanging myself, Gweedo.
Well, how you doing, Gweedo?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Are you ready to talk about Swiss Army Man?
I suppose.
Well, the reason why we picked this film is because we got an email from a Brady Skinner, which I believe is B-Rady. I believe so. But his email...
It's gotta be, right?
It's gotta be. I'm pretty sure. His email says, "Last night I watched a movie that left me speechless. It was surreal and incredible. It's original, full of life, and only a handful of people made it. Please watch Swiss Army Man. I cannot find the words to describe this movie, but I know it is important." And I mean, how could we not talk about this film after an email like that? And I would have to agree. This movie is something. And it sort of at points really left me a bit speechless. Like, the premise, it's all built on the premise. Everything else you've seen before, but the premise is pretty interesting. So basically what happens is a guy gets shipwrecked on an island. We don't know anything else about that situation. It's just he was shipwrecked. And he's about to kill himself until he sees a body wash up on the shore. And he just, he goes and checks on it, and it's dead, and it's not doing anything. And he goes back to hang himself, and it starts farting a lot. To the point that it starts like going back out to sea and going around in circles. And I mean, that killed me already. That was just hilarious. Because you're looking at Daniel Radcliffe, you know, a pretty well-respected guy, you know, I mean, other than his Harry Potter, he's done a lot of stage stuff. And yeah, I understand. But, you know, it's just not, you don't see him as wanting to take on a role where he's a dead corpse that's farting around in the water. You know, he's got that Harry Potter money. He doesn't need to do that. But he did. And and the rest of the film is about them kind of growing together. And go ahead, Gweedo.
This movie was touted at the time when it came out as the Daniel Radcliffe farting movie.
For a good reason.
Yeah, that's what I remember people talking about. It was like, or, you know, you told someone you watched Swiss Army Man and they were like, oh, the one where Daniel Radcliffe just farts the whole movie.
That was the hook. And I gotta say, it's pretty smart. You know, if it was just any other actor, like, I don't know, if you had like Seth Green washing up and farting around the water for, 2 hours, you wouldn't really care. You know, it's like, of course that's a film he would do. But Daniel Radcliffe, it's like, just strange enough that you're already hooked. Just a little bit. Just to at least see what's going on. So I gotta give him that, And the film, it has heart. If I was going to say one thing about it, it has heart. Maybe a little too heavy-handed on a lot of its themes. Like, I was thinking about it on the way home. If there was a film that someone was like, I want you to pick a film that kind of helps encapsulate millennials, I would probably pick this film for a lot of reasons. First, it's not boring, and you can't be bored because there's so many jump cuts and fast editing that it's hard to be bored about the whole film. So it keeps your attention even through parts that are just kind of boring. Would you agree?
I got to be 100% honest. I watched this movie when it came out, and I don't remember much about it.
Great.
Yeah, so I don't know if that speaks to the movie as a whole, in that it just was kind of forgettable for me. Sure. I remember there being tons of symbolism.
Right. Right.
But yeah, in terms of speaking towards millennials, I don't know if I can comment on that because I don't remember anything sticking out of my head where I was like, "Oh yeah, this will identify with my millennials 100%."
I feel like the editing, as I said before, also the heavy-handed themes. Like it's very heavy-handed, saying you have this guy who considers himself an outcast, and he's like, people will just throw away things that don't matter to them, but maybe in those things that we throw away, there's actually beauty, man. That kind of mentality. I know that's definitely nothing new, and that's not new with millennials. I mean, that goes way further back, but it felt like the way that it shared those ideas and not necessarily being maybe not overly clever, felt like a millennial thing. Like it felt like the whole thing I was watching a philosophical meme that like a college student would have made. And that, at least that's just that's the feeling I had through the whole thing. Like, what if farts were beautiful, or what if everyone just accepted their farts? Like that's something that some kid growing up on all kinds of memes would probably say in college, maybe halfway joking or being ironic. But that's kind of the theme of this whole film, and I gotta say it did a pretty good job of it. The message wasn't necessarily wrong, and the way it shared it was at least interesting, and even the acting, although there's not a ton of it. I don't even know who the main character is. I've never seen him before in anything. We all know Daniel Radcliffe, and I mean, for trying to be a dead guy who's kind of at the end, you don't know if the main guy was hallucinating the whole thing or not. It's he did a pretty good job.
It seemed to me like it was like a break in his psyche. He was just going through something very deep and profound in his own self, and kind of projected that onto a corpse.
Well, you see, that's the most logical thing that you're constantly thinking through the whole film. And what happens is the main character shows Daniel Radcliffe, who is in all intents and purposes dead, like things about his life, trying to teach him stuff because Daniel Radcliffe has forgotten everything because he's dead. So he shows him a picture of this girl on his phone, and he's like, oh my God, that girl's the most beautiful girl in the whole world. And it's the girl that the main guy really likes. So for some reason, he starts acting out scenes from the main guy's life, but Daniel Radcliffe is playing the main guy, like they're on the bus, and they're playing a scene where Daniel Radcliffe is him, and the other guy plays as the girl, and they're like having exchanges, and it's super weird to talk about now, and I feel kind of gross talking about it, but it's actually, it's pretty well done. But you're right, Guido. You start thinking, okay, he's just trying to talk as if the person he wants to be to himself, and trying to kind of get through his skull. Why don't you just go for it? Especially since now you might not even make it back home because you're stranded on an island. And but as the film goes on, especially once you get to the end, he stops acting, the Daniel Radcliffe. So you start wondering that, okay, it was just all in his head, and he's dead. And at the very end, we see Daniel Radcliffe thrown in the water, and he farts off, and he looks back and he's smiling. So then you're like, I don't know. And there's other people witnessing it too. So you're like, it reminds me at the end of a much better movie, being Birdman, where the main character, I just totally forgot his name, Michael Keaton, after he's been talking to his alter ego the whole movie, and you think he might have powers, he jumps out the window, and his daughter's there, and she just looks out the window and she's smiling, and as if he's flying away. So it makes you wonder, okay, did that really happen or not? Kind of the same concept here, although it's with farts and Daniel Radcliffe with this dumb smirk on his face. And it's not bad. I can't say it's bad. It's well shot. It's super simplistic. Mainly you're just in the forest the whole time, so lots of nature shots. But it's just edited fast enough and it's just strange enough to keep you interested. And
I felt at points, I think it was too strange.
Oh, how so? I agree, but I'm curious to see what parts were too strange for you.
I remember maybe giving this like 2 shots. Like it took me 2 times to try and watch it.
Okay.
And it got to the part, I think, he's like super thirsty and he can't find water, and doesn't Harry Potter just barf up a bunch of water for him to drink?
He does.
And I remember just being like, I don't know if I need to watch this.
Yeah, that part, and there's also a montage where he's just using them for a bunch of different things, but he uses Daniel Radcliffe's like upper teeth, like his mouth, to shave. So it's just like him sticking his whole face in Daniel Radcliffe's mouth and shaving. It's stuff like that. That's probably the 2 big extremes. Well, he puts a cork up his butt, but we don't really see that in the movie, but we know it happens. But at the very end, how that pays off is they're drowning and he uncorks his butt and they shoot up in the air and you see a big frame of Daniel Radcliffe's ass.
Anyone that's never heard of this movie is just like, what the fuck are they talking about right now?
I know. That's why I felt so gross, just mumbling, as if it's just completely normal. This is normal conversation. It's strange. And everything we've said is in the movie and is handled not like who's the one who did the Bum Bum song? He does all those movies. Freddy Got Fingered and movies like that. The gross out comedies.
Tom Green,
thank you. It's not like that. It sounds like it definitely is. And in the hands of someone else, like Tom Green, it would be that. But it's done about as artistically as you possibly could do it without it being completely disgusting. Like, the water is kind of a big revelation because he's nearly about to dehydrate and die. And a lot of the other ways he uses them, like with farts, kind of riding him off the island, is for a purpose. He's needing to get off the island. And so it's done. It rides that line really well. And I've got to give him props for that.
All this stuff happening, it doesn't, like, none of it makes sense while you're watching it. Like, you have to suspend your disbelief so far.
You do.
That it's just, maybe that was my problem. I had to disbelief. I had to suspend my disbelief so far that I was like, what's the point?
Right.
Right. This is just a fever dream of a movie where they can do anything and there's no, like, whatever problem he has, something, the Daniel Radcliffe will fix it somehow.
Right. I started feeling the kind of the weight of the film, kind of like what you're talking about, whenever they would jump into those like themes, like they were going through a bunch of trash and talking about how all this trash represents stuff in life, and I'm like, okay, I'm not watching this movie to learn some philosophy. I want to see Daniel Radcliffe, farting everywhere, which you still get. When it lightened up on those tones and was just kind of hitting the learning more about the main character, and even though you don't really care about him outside of the, he's a human, you just don't want him necessarily to die because he's a human, and that's kind of all it needed, just baseline. And Daniel Radcliffe being kind of the instrument to get him from point A to point B is what kind of keeps you hooked and going along. But at the very end, I was going to be very mad because we get to the end and he just wanders into the lady he likes, her yard, and she gets a hold of his phone and notices that he's been taking a bunch of creepy pictures of her. And so she's freaked out and is like calling the cops and everything. And his dad, he's had dad issues, and his dad doesn't even want to see check to see if the body in the bag, which is Daniel Radcliffe, he only wants to see if it's actually his son, because he just kind of doesn't care. So all this stuff is just like accumulating that, oh man, life is terrible, and him being gone for forever didn't amount to anything. I was like, man, what a waste of time, just to end a movie like this on such a sour note. And it turns it around. And mainly the point that turns it around is no one thinks he's that crazy anymore because they're seeing Daniel Radcliffe fart off into the sunset. So that helps a little bit. But still, that's about 10 to 15 minutes of the film that you just feel like you wasted your whole time. And I felt like that was a point where I knew they were trying to hit home a message, but I still didn't feel like this film was the correct film to hit that message home. I want to see a happy, not necessarily a happy ending, but something a little more interesting, like, they fart up onto the beach where all his family and everything are there, and they're like, what the hell? Something like that. At least didn't make me feel kind of depressed, like, oh man, life does really suck. It just,
Yeah.
It came off that way, and I didn't care for that. But everything else before that point, it's good. You can watch way worse.
Yeah, you definitely can. I just feel it's like it's barely a cliff note in the past decade of movie making for me. Like, it's just such a forgettable movie.
Although I don't know if I agree with that. Mainly because it's Daniel Radcliffe being a water fountain, a fart propelled jet ski. That in itself is interesting, and to actually make a movie that's cohesive and actually tells a good and decent story.
If that wasn't Daniel Radcliffe, would it have the same impact? If that wasn't Harry Potter,
I felt it would, but I do not know if I would have watched it. See, that's the point. That's the problem with the film, is that's its only hook. I would say that's like the only thing that would have even got me remotely interested, was hearing that this actor is playing this odd of a role. If they just got some no-name person, I probably wouldn't even, even consider watching it, because I don't want to watch a movie about some random actor guy farting around the water for 2 hours. I don't care about that. But Daniel Radcliffe, okay, that's interesting for him to choose. The only way you could top that is go even crazier with, like, I don't know, George Clooney or Tom Cruise, which they wouldn't do it, but it's odd that he would do it. So it's just, that's the marketing hook. And what I got after getting hooked was actually not bad. And I would consider well worth my time, and I would highly recommend it to anyone interested in an odd movie. Don't expect anything outstanding, incredible. I think this movie definitely has gotten more hype than it deserved. Of course, that's been about 2 years ago when everyone was talking about it. But it definitely is a decent film that I would recommend to anyone who at least finds the premise interesting.
Sure. Yeah, I guess. I can't recommend it to anyone.
That's fair. Well, I don't really think there's much else to say. It's sad that for a film that's about a guy like cutting stuff with his legs who's dead, you drink out of his mouth, that there's not really much else to say. But after you just say that, those are all the exciting parts, and then you're just left with a story of a guy who I guess has kind of gone through at least bits and pieces of what we all have gone through in our life, and that's kind of uplifting. But yeah, go check it out. It's free. Go on Amazon. I think it's on Netflix. It's worth a watch. Well, okay.
Sweet.
Well, let's go ahead and just rank this sucker.
Okay. Let's see. Where would I put this?
I definitely, for me, I think it has rewatchability. I would really consider watching it again. So you're gonna hate me. I would probably put it under Moana and above Black Panther. I knew it. Okay, on our, and if you're interested in our list, pause this and go straight to justokaymovies.com. Middle of the page, there's our link for our movies of all time, and you can definitely see while we're discussing the ranking that we're considering for this film, and you might get the same reaction that Guido got. It's just like, if I look at the rest of the list below that, like Black Panther, Ready Player One, Rogue One, I mean, even I would not want to watch those films again. And even though I would rewatch Battlefield Earth, this movie is much better than that. So that's the only spot that I'll be like, it makes sense.
I guess I'd put it probably below Ready Player One.
That's fair. I think that's fair, and I will agree with you on that one. Black Panther and Ready Player One, I think are movies that, even though I personally didn't care for them, a lot of thought and a lot of talent went into making those films. And
yeah, I think just in general, more people would like those movies of the entire population than they would Swiss Army Man.
I would agree with you there. So, well, very nice. So now we've got a new number 10 film, and that is Swiss Army Man. Poor Rogue One.
Getting pushed down, man.
Push weight it deserves.
Hanging out with Batman and Robin and Baron Munchausen.
Well, hey, if you have any comments of your own, or hey, if you've got any films you'd like us to watch, I can't promise you we'll watch them, but please shoot us an email at justokmovies@gmail.com, and we'll definitely consider giving it a watch. And if you have any other thoughts, any comments on this film, we would absolutely love to hear them. I love hearing your correspondence, and thank you, Be Ready, for sending this one in. I was considering watching it. It sat in my watch list forever, and you gave me just that nudge to watch it, and I'm happy I did. So I really appreciate that a lot. And and also I wanted to let everyone know we are now on Spotify. So if you're not happy with your current pod service of choice, we're on Spotify now. It took forever, but we're there. So you can definitely.
I don't know how you got on
well.
Spotify before us, before the main podcast. Fucking Spotify.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening, and tune in next week for, I'm not really sure what film we're going to do next week. I'll have to take a look. All right.
I got to set that watching party up for.
Oh, that's right.
Old Dogs. Maybe I'll try and get that done.
That sounds great, man. Yeah. Speaking of that, if you're not, I'm sure everyone listening is probably in Discord already, but if you're not, please get into the Just Okay Gamers Discord. What's the link to that, Guido? Do you know?
It is discord.gg/justokgamer.
Join in. It's a great community. A bunch of great people are there. We'll talk all about games, movies, and I know when we plan this watch party for Old Dogs, it'll be announced there. So please come join us. It's a good time. But all right, everyone, take care. Everyone have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.